There is a state in America where the grocery store sells reindeer sausage next to the hot dogs, where the ice cream has no dairy in it, where the most dangerous job is not on a highway or a construction site, but on a boat in the Bering Sea in October, hauling 800-pound steel traps in 40-foot waves. Alaska, the largest state in America, bigger than Texas, California, and Montana combined. Population smaller than Louisville, Kentucky. A place where roads run out before communities do, and where food has always meant something different than it means anywhere else. 10 dishes. One state at the edge of the continent that has been feeding people on its own terms since before most of the country existed, before ice cream existed, before dairy farming existed, before sugar was a grocery staple. The Yupik and Inupiat peoples of Alaska were already making a frozen whipped dessert from Arctic animal fat, wild berries, and freshly fallen snow. They called it Akutak. The word is Yupik for mix them together. White settlers later called it Eskimo ice cream. Traditional Akutak starts with hard fat, caribou tallow, seal oil, rendered bear fat. The fat is worked by hand in a birch bark container until it incorporates air. Then berries are folded in. Salmon berries, cloudberries, crowberries, blueberries. Sometimes dried fish. The result is white, fluffy, dense. Not sweet the way sugar is sweet. Sweet the way wild berries are sweet. Akutak was hunting food. Women made it after the first catch of a seal or polar bear and shared it with the entire community. Made for funerals, potlatches, celebrations of a boy's first hunt. Carried by hunters across the tundra for weeks. There is a rule about Akutak. Your choice of berry is a lifetime decision. You may eat any flavor made by others. But if you are caught making more than one kind yourself, you lose all social standing. This is not a guideline. It is a law. In 1945, Lowell Wakefield went to his father's cannery on Kodiak Island with an idea everyone thought was impractical. Japanese and Russian fishermen had been catching king crab in the Bering Sea since the 1920s. Americans knew the crab was there. Nobody had built a viable industry around it. Wakefield built the Deep Sea, a 140-foot steel trawler for Bering Sea weather, and started catching and flash-freezing king crab at sea. Then he had to sell it. No market existed. Restaurant chefs thought giant crab legs were too exotic. He convinced one restaurateur in Atlantic City to put it on the menu. People liked the taste. Other restaurants noticed. He hired Lowell Thomas, the broadcaster who made Lawrence of Arabia famous, to film a documentary about crab fishing. He put his captain on the road selling frozen king crab from the trunk of a car. He invented the commercial king crab industry through sheer will. By 1980, Alaska produced 200 million pounds of king crab annually. Then the stocks collapsed. Overfishing, warming water, predation. Catches dropped 90%. Strict quotas were imposed. In 2005, Deadliest Catch premiered on Discovery Channel. A generation of Americans learned that their restaurant crab legs came from the most dangerous fishing on Earth. One crab fisherman dies approximately every week during the season. The fatality rate is 80 times the national average. Alaska has 5 species of Pacific salmon. The king, largest, fattiest, most prized. The sockeye, most commercially harvested. The coho, most versatile. The pink, most abundant, used for canning. The chum, toughest, dried for subsistence. Canneries opened in Klawak and Sitka in 1878. Within years, they spread along the entire coast. By the early 20th century, canned salmon from Alaska was feeding the country and generating over 80% of Alaska's tax revenues. The salmon didn't just feed people, they built the state. Alaska Native communities had smoked salmon for thousands of years before the canneries arrived. Brined, hung over alder smoke for days, dried into dense planks. Smoked salmon is not a brunch garnish. It is the food that sustained entire communities through Arctic winters. The food you eat from October to June when the river is frozen and nothing else is coming. Alaska produces over half the commercial seafood catch in the United States. Bristol Bay sockeye is considered by many chefs the finest salmon in the world. In 1892, the federal government imported 1,280 reindeer from Siberia and established herding programs across western Alaska, concerned about food security for native coastal communities disrupted by commercial whaling. The herd grew to 600,000 animals by the 1930s, then collapsed from overgrazing. What survived was a food tradition: reindeer sausage, coarsely ground reindeer and pork, seasoned and smoked, served on a split bun with grilled onions, cream cheese, and hot sauce. The cream cheese is non-negotiable, not ketchup, not mustard. Cream cheese and hot sauce melting under grilled onions on a toasted bun. Walk through Anchorage and you find reindeer sausage carts on street corners. At fairs, festivals, sporting events. The reindeer dog carts, red with a cartoon reindeer, are as much a part of Anchorage's sidewalk identity as pretzel carts are in New York. Pacific halibut is the largest flatfish in the world. They can weigh 500 pounds. They live on the ocean floor at depths down to 3,600 feet. Alaska accounts for over 80% of U.S. Pacific halibut production. When you order halibut at a restaurant anywhere in America, there is a very good chance it came from Alaskan waters. Beer-battered halibut fish and chips is the default Friday lunch in coastal Alaska towns. Halibut cheeks, the small, round muscles on either side of the head. Go to people who know what to ask for. A 100-pound halibut is not unusual. A 200-pound halibut is possible. The fish is caught on circle hooks baited with herring, hauled from the bottom, often killed with a bang stick before being brought aboard. A 300-pound halibut thrashing on a boat deck is genuinely dangerous. Alaska eats one of the world's great fish because it comes up from the cold water right below them. That is the entire explanation. The Klondike Gold Rush began in 1896. By 1898, over 100,000 prospectors were attempting to reach the gold fields through Alaska. They needed food that would survive months in the wilderness. They brought sourdough starter. A sourdough starter is a live culture of wild yeast and bacteria fed with flour and water, used to leaven bread without commercial yeast. The prospectors carried their starters in pouches worn against their bodies, using body heat to keep the culture alive in freezing temperatures. Alaska's gold rush prospectors became known as sourdoughs. To be called a sourdough was to be recognized as someone who had wintered in Alaska, who had survived the cold and the darkness and the isolation. New arrivals were called chichacos, the newcomers who hadn't yet earned the name. There are people in Alaska who maintain sourdough starters over 100 years old. They feed them weekly. They give pieces to friends when asked. This entry has no single inventor, no founding date, no restaurant that claims credit. Dried salmon is one of the oldest foods in North America. Alaska Native peoples have been preserving salmon by drying, smoking, and fermenting it for thousands of years. Since long before the first Europeans arrived in Alaska, since long before Alaska had a name in any European language. The process is specific. Fresh salmon is filleted and cut into strips. The strips are hung on wooden racks in the open air, in the wind, over weeks. The flesh loses its moisture slowly and evenly, concentrating the protein and fat into something dense, dark, and intensely flavored. When properly dried, salmon keeps for months without refrigeration, essential in a climate where winter means no fish and no alternative protein. Different communities have different methods. Some smoke the drying fish, some do not. Some add salt. Some rely on the fish's own salt content. Some ferment the strips in covered pits, producing a product called stinkfish that is an acquired taste of significant intensity. Different rivers produce different fish with different fat content that dries differently. Most people know maple syrup. Almost nobody outside Alaska knows birch syrup exists. Birch trees grow across Alaska's boreal forests. In spring, when nights freeze and days warm, birch sap runs. Alaskans tap it, collect it, boil it down. Here is the problem. Birch sap contains 1/4 the sugar of maple sap. To make a gallon of maple syrup, you need 40 gallons of sap. To make a gallon of birch syrup, you need 80 to 110 gallons. This is why birch syrup costs more per ounce than almost any other food product in Alaska, and why it has never gone mass market. The flavor is not what you expect. Dark, complex, slightly savory. A mineral edge, a hint of something almost balsamic. Not sweet in the way maple is sweet. Alaskan chefs use it in salmon glazes, salad dressings, cocktails. The birch syrup season lasts 2 to 3 weeks. Miss it, and you wait another year. You have almost certainly eaten Alaska pollock. You have almost certainly not known that you were eating it. Pollock is the white fish in McDonald's Filet-O-Fish. It is the fish in most imitation crab. The product labeled surimi, or crab, at every grocery store. It is in fish sticks, fish tacos, frozen fish portions under a dozen brand names. If you eat processed seafood in America, you eat Alaska pollock. The Bering Sea pollock fishery produces approximately 3 billion pounds of fish per year. It is the largest food fishery in the world by volume. Factory ships catch, process, and freeze the fish at sea, operating for weeks in some of the most difficult waters on the planet. Alaska pollock feeds more Americans than any other single fish. Almost none of them know its name. It has been feeding people since the first humans arrived from Siberia across the land bridge and found the most abundant and most demanding food landscape in the hemisphere. The Yupik and Inupiat peoples built food systems of extraordinary sophistication over thousands of years. Not because they were chefs, but because the alternative was starvation. The king crab industry exists because one man sold frozen crab from the trunk of a car in 1945. The reindeer sausage cart exists because the federal government imported Siberian animals in 1892. The sourdough starter in an Anchorage kitchen may have come across the Chilkoot Pass in a canvas pouch in 1898. Not every state has a food that requires you to commit to a single berry for your entire life. Not every state's most consumed fish is known by almost no one who eats it. Not every state still has people maintaining sourdough cultures that crossed a mountain range in a pouch over a century ago.